Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, and welcome back to Slave Ages Podcast. I'm your host, Preston Frazier. On this very special episode of season number 7, we're going to talk about the album by Southern Pacific called Killbilly Hill. This album came out in 1986. I'm not sure what month it came out or what date it came out, but we know it came out in 1986, and it was the band's third album. Before we get to that, I want to first thank my patrons members who have contributed to the podcast and my website and are credited as executive producers: Amy Asser, Symphony Tom, Benicio Cifuentes, and Cheryl Frazier. Thank you all for your contributions to the Sing of Ages podcast and my website. And of course, my book, Toto the Band, Not the Dog, is still for sale. You can get it at my website, which is singofages.com. It's available on Amazon and on Barnes and Noble and other media outlets as well. You can get a physical copy or you can get the PDF. It is newly revised for the PDF format, so it's easier to read. And I think you'll love the album. I think you'll love the album. I think you'll love the book. I know I do. I'm working on my second book now, which should be out in a few months. And then my third book, I'm in the conceptual stages of that. So more to come from me and more to come on the Slave Ages podcast. But let's get back to Killbilly Hill. This is episode number 8. And this is the first time in a while we've reviewed an album. I think first time probably since the beginning of the season that we reviewed an album. And this is a copy of the album. You can see it. I know it's probably with the distortion, but this is actually the physical vinyl copy, which I've had since the 80s. Absolutely love the album. It is a country album, but it's interesting because it's a country album put together by rock musicians. The band Southern Pacific consisted of, at the time this album came out, Tim Goodman, who's a singer-songwriter out of California. And he's not very popular, but he is very well known in the country western world. Then, of course, you have the great John McFee, not John McVie for Fleetwood Mac, John McFee, who before this album was done, before Southern Pacific did albums, he was a member of the Doobie Brothers before they broke up in 1982, I believe. And he's a noted session player in California and in Nashville. It also included the late, great Keith Knudsen on drums. Keith was the Doobie Brothers' third drummer. He did vocals with the Doobies as well as drumming. He's probably the best drummer. He had fantastic range as a rock jazz drummer. And here he's playing country. And then you also had keyboardist Kurt Howell. And Kurt Howell he's still around, he's still alive, but I think now he's doing computer work. He doesn't do music anymore, but he is a pretty good vocalist and a pretty good keyboard player. Like I mentioned, this was Killbilly Hill was the band's second album. Their first album was called Southern Pacific, which was released in 1985 on Warner Brothers and got to number 25 on the country charts. Killbilly Hill, which was released in November 1986, so we know the month at least, got to number 35 on the country chart. And then Zuma, which had a slightly different lineup in 1988, got to 27. And the last album was County Line, which was released in 1990, got to number 42 on the country chart. And I need to mention that the band does have a greatest hits album out, and there's some box sets including all their albums together, but they haven't really recorded anything since County Line as Southern Pacific. There is an album which McPhee, Knudsen, and I forgot one member of the band. McPhee, Knudsen, and what's the guy's name? Not Kurt Howe. Um, Stu Cook put together. And Stu Cook, how could I forget him? He was the original bassist for Creedence Clearwater Revival and did the Creedence Clearwater Revisited group as well. He handles bass and vocals, and he's pretty strong in both. So those four musicians. This is the only album that these four actually did together, because the first album, Southern Pacific, had Jerry Sheff on bass and Glenn D. Harden on keyboards, who were noted Nashville heavyweights, and they decided not to stay with the band, not to tour. And then the Zuma album by Zuma, Tim Goodman had left the band. The rumor was that he won the lottery, or didn't want to be in the band, didn't want to tour anymore, but still wanted to do music. So for Zuma, they brought in a guy named Dave Jenkins, which I think was from Pure Prairie League. And then from County Line, at that point, Dave Jenkins had left, and John McFee handled all the most of the lead vocals on County Line. He's an amazing vocalist as well as a guitarist. So we talked about the chart position. Um, we talked about the Doobies, the ex Doobies, McPhee and Knudsen, and the ex CCR member. And they came together and they wrote some great songs and the playing is excellent in this album. Uh, John McPhee is a very versatile guitarist. He was in a band called Clover, which really spawned Huey Lewis and the News because Huey Lewis was in that band. McPhee plays electric guitar, acoustic guitar, pedal steel, slide guitar, violin, viola, harmonica. He is just a jack of all trades, a master of all of them too. So in this album, he has a really distinctive guitar sound. He doesn't go for the rock sound that he had on the Doobie Brothers tours or on the Doobie Brothers last album before they broke up, which was One Step Closer. Instead, he goes for a really twangy, almost Telecaster sound which you would get from a player like Alvin Lee. And he's excellent. He plays wonderfully. And Knudsen, who can handle really difficult rhythms, is a fantastic drummer. Also, kind of scaled it back a little bit, more of a country vein, much more direct grooves from Knudsen and from Stu Cook. And Kurt Howe handled piano sounds, he handled the organ sounds, and he handled a little synth sound. So it worked out really well. So the album, like I said, it wasn't a pop hit. It was a kind of a medium country hit, and it has some great songs on it. Some which were recorded, which were written by the band, and some which were not. But they did great interpretations of it. Well, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that the album was produced by Jim Ed Norman. So if you know anything about country music and Southern California music, Jim Ed Norman been around for a long time. He's became a record executive. He's a string arranger. He worked extensively on the first three Eagles albums, helping with arrangements, strings. So he was a big deal. He loved the band and produced, I believe he produced all their albums and did a great job with it. The sound is clean and contemporary. The vocals are good. The playing is excellent, and the songs are strong. So let's start with the songs, and there are just 10 songs on the album. The first one is called Road Song. And I love Road Song because it's like one of those. It's what you would expect a Nashville band to put out back in the 80s. So it doesn't have that Nashville. Now Nashville country music sounds like pop music. Back then, there was a little twang to it, and it is really kind of an ode to the road that the band wrote. And this was written by the whole entire band: Goodman, Cook, Howell, Knudsen, and McPhee. But it's sung by Goodman and by Keith Knudsen, the drummer. And the song starts with "I can see the lights of Fort Worth shining." 35 miles to the finish line. All this night, my band's been driving 35 minutes to showtime. Met a little girl last night in Las Vegas. Said goodbye to my last dime. Now I'm living on next week's wages. Long as we're working, I'm doing fine. Take me back to Tulsa. Put me on the Lost Highway. We'll go honky tonkin'. Pretty woman and I can't stay in. The wheels keep turning round. So it's an ode to the road. It's 3 minutes, 3.5 minutes of fun, great licks. McPhee's solo is electric guitar solo is great. Then he throws in a pedal steel solo, which is fantastic. And one thing that I forgot to mention, Goodman handles acoustic guitar and some rhythm guitar. Well, on the road, it was mostly McVie's playing on electric guitar. And even when they went to a four-piece, McVie would switch from electric to pedal steel to violin and back as one guitarist in the band, and it worked really well. But this song has a lot of different guitar parts, and McVie's just brilliant. It's a nice twangy sound to it. And the song is one of those like beer country um, cliche songs, but it's a good cliche. It works. The next song is a one of the band's biggest hits, biggest country hits, and it was written by Goodman, Cook, McPhee, and Knudsen. It's called "A Girl Like Emmy Lou." If you know anything about the band, you know that the band had Emmy Lou Harris on their first album. She did a duet with the band. I don't think it was written for her, but it has a great feel. It's kind of mid-tempo rocker, and again, you have that trebly guitar sound by McPhee, which works out well. Then the next song is a cover, and it's a unusual cover, but it's probably maybe a sacrilegious to say. It's probably my favorite version of the song Pink Cadillac, because you may know that Chris, the Queen of Soul, Aretha Franklin did a version of Pink Cadillac, which became a big hit. Southern Pacific did a version of Pink Cadillac, which was also actually a hit on country radio. And the lyrics are the same that Springsteen used. There's a outtake album that Springsteen put out 20 years ago, which includes his version of Pink Cadillac, which I think was written for the river. And but the band does a song justice here. McVie's lead guitar work is great. The guitar solos are great, and Goodman's swagger when he sings a song is just it's really good. That's a great job. Great way to incorporate that rock world and a classic into their album. The next song after Pink Cadillac is a ballad called I Still Look for You. It was written by Carl Struck and Michael Noble. I don't know who they are. I have no idea. Didn't look them up. And the song which Goodman sings is a slow ballad talking about lost love and regret. And Goodman's good at singing songs like that. McPhee's pedal steel work is amazing. The one thing about McPhee, if you know him, I mean, he's been on, like I mentioned, he was a Doobie Brother when Jeff Baxter got kicked out of the band. He did the Minute by Minute tour. Then he helped write two songs on a One Step Closer album. Then when they broke up, he formed Southern Pacific. Then he got back together with Johnston and Patrick Simmons. He wasn't invited back. But then they needed a third guitarist, so they added McPhee for their Sibling Rivalry album, which was in the early 90s. And he's been a member ever since. So he's been a Doobie Brother longer than most people, longer than probably Michael McDonald, longer than probably Tom Johnston. But he doesn't get a lot of opportunity with the Doobies to write songs. He did write on the last album they put out 2 years ago. The new album, which comes out when this podcast comes out. He's a member, but I don't think he wrote any of the songs either. And he's such a great writer. So his strength has always been his guitar work with Patrick Simmons and Doobie Brothers, but it's a very rock sound. And here you don't have that. Here you have him playing his country role. He does it really well. You also may know that John McPhee was a member, helped Elvis Costello with the album Almost Blue. He handled the lead guitar, the pedal steel guitar. So he has a great pedigree and he's great on this album. The sounds are great. Next song is another cover by Lewis Story called Pull Your Hat Down Tight, which is a what you would expect a country band to do, kind of a cliche hat. One for a ride tonight, guys. It'll be tough. You better pull your hat down tight. Yeah, you better pull your hat down tight. McVie handles the lead vocal, his first one with the band at this point. The vocals are strong, but also what's amazing about this song is he does a wonderful job with his mandolin playing and his electric guitar solos, having both those spliced together. And again, it's overdubbed, so I can't imagine how they would do that on stage because McPhee's solo is very Albert Lee light in terms of the speed of the solo and the cleanness of his picking, but it's wonderful. So that song for the guitar work alone is definitely one you want to check out. Then we get to side two. Guess back in the old days, you had two sides. So side two, you can barely see that, but there you go. And side two, the first song is an original composition by Goodman and there we go. Goodman and McPhee is called it's a title track called Killbilly Hill. And it's a song that McPhee sings, even though Goodman helped write it. And the song talks about McPhee's daddy working on an oil rig, and but he made his living at a Killbilly gig. Played guitar with a mighty hand, and he loved to see the promised land, something like that. And it's just again what you used to hear in country lyrics, religion, working hard, drinking hard. But the song just smokes. It's probably the fastest pace on the album. Um, Keith Knudsen handles a straight 4/4 rhythm, handles it really well. Um, and the drums just sing here. And then McPhee's solo, his lead work and solos are very Telecaster-like, no distortion, very clean picking, and the speed in which he plays is absolutely amazing. The song itself is good, it's good fun, but the instrumentation, wow, it's just perfect. Next up is a ballad, and that is sung by Hal, and it includes it was written with Hal and Henry Maslin, so one of Hal's longtime collaborators, I believe. And the song is it's a ballad. The song is a strong ballad. It's called "Don't Let Go of My Heart." It was released as a single, and Hal's vocals are pretty strong overall. He's a good singer. He's very emotional, and this song has touches of synth string, Hal handling the piano, and McPhee handling some really tremolo guitar and pedal steel, which really sets the song apart. Good song. It was a hit on country radio. It was Hal's first turn at bat lead vocal, and he did a good job. And as I mentioned, Hal stepped away from music. He hasn't come back yet. I'm not sure if he'll ever come back, but he is currently think he's an executive at a computer company. So, and Kurt Howe also produced one solo album after this came out, I believe, and the album was really kind of a R&B pop thing. Nothing, not at all like country music. So there you go. Next song is "What's It Gonna Take," and that was written by by Kurt Howe, John McPhee, Keith Knudsen, and Stu Cook, and it's sung by Goodman. And it is bouncy. It is typical, or what the stereotype of country songs. This is probably it. I don't care. It sounds fun. It has an upbeat tempo. Again, the guitar work and the rhythms are great. And one thing I like about this band is, I mean, they make the cliches sound good because they're such good players and singers. The harmonies are excellent here. The rhythm is excellent. Stu Cook, the bassist, handles really straight time, but he handles it really well, making it interesting. And if you can punch up a straight time rhythm and a 4/4 rhythm like Keith Knudsen did and make it interesting, good for you. But what's another thing that sets the song apart, of course, is that fantastic harmony vocal coming from all of them. Everyone in the band sings, including the drummer, and it sounds really good backing up Tim Goodman. Track number nine is Hearts on the Borderline. And this is written by outside writers Pat Bunch, Pam Rose, Mary Ann Kennedy. And the song builds and builds and builds, only it doesn't really go anywhere. It has these great guitar parts and these nice string synths, and it builds an intensity with Goodman's vocal, talking about love, searching for love, and what happens, we never know because after 3.5 minutes, it's still missing something. So this is my probably my least favorite song on the album. And then the closing song is another cover by Jamie O'Hara and Kieran Kane called Bluegrass Blues. This song is the last recorded lead vocal by Tim Goodman for Southern Pacific. And the song really takes off after its name because it has a bluegrass feel. You have the violin by McPhee. You have mandolin by McPhee. You have the acoustic guitar by Goodman, and then you have harmonies by the entire band to close out the album. So the album ends with almost not quite an instrumental, not quite a song. Well, it's a country song with no bass, no drums, and it works out fine. It's a good end to the album. So that is the album. It's pretty short, about 35 minutes, 10 songs. It made it to number 35 in the country charts, did not chart at all in the pop charts, and it sold reasonably well. It didn't cross over to the pop charts or the rock charts, and I wouldn't expect it to. And it's actually the band's second worst selling album, but it still made a respectable showing and kicked them off on another path in terms of their tour, which Goodman participated in before they got to the next album in 2 years, which is called Zuma, which sold really well for them. But this is my favorite Southern Pacific album. So that is it. I know this was quick. Episode number 8, season 7 of Slaying Vegas podcast. I really appreciate you listening. Again, I want to thank those who follow me on Patreon and thank the executive producers, Amy Asser, Sensei Tom, Benito Cifuentes, and Cheryl Frazier. And thank all of you who've bought the book, Toto the Band, Not the Dog. If you haven't bought it, like I said, a revised copy is out on all streaming platforms, on all digital platforms, and you can buy physical copies as well. And if you want, please join my Patreon hive. It's at Slaying Vegas Podcast on Patreon. And for the less than a cup of coffee, that's the cost of a cup of coffee, you can join my Patreon group and get exclusive content. So we'll be back in 2 weeks with episode number 9 of Slaying Vegas Podcast. We have a few more interviews coming up. I'm not going to spoil those. I appreciate each and every one of you who tune into this, who listen to this, like, share, and subscribe, and all the other stuff people say you have to do. And I will see you all very soon. Thank you very much. Take care.